Father skipped my wedding for his deceitful girlfriend's fake surgeries, so I decided to cut him out of my life forever. I, 35F, was very low contact with my father for many years. He and my mother had a bitter divorce when I was 18, and he found his current girlfriend Debbie when I was 20. Without going too in-depth, he was physically and mentally abusive my whole life until I moved out when I was 20. When the pandemic hit, he started calling more. With the state of the world, and me being now in my 30s, I was more open to communicating with him. We very slowly would communicate, with me setting very firm boundaries with conversation topics. He would occasionally violate them, scream at me, he'd go in time out, and then he'd be good for a while. When I met my husband Victor, my father was actually excited for me. Spent time trying to get to know him over the phone. Was happy for me. When I moved in with Victor, my father actually apologized to me for everything he'd done. For the first time in my life I felt heard and validated by my father. He apologized for treating me like trash in favor of my siblings. He apologized for all the horrible things he did to me. And I cried. I felt validation and relief like I never had before. And I was then completely open to a relationship with him again. When I got engaged he was thrilled. He asked if he was walking me down the aisle, and I had told him no. It didn't really feel right to me, and I wasn't having bridesmaids or groomsmen, so it made sense to walk by myself. No one in my family was ever there for me, so why wouldn't I walk towards my next chapter alone like I did my adult life? He was disappointed but was okay with it. I told him we can have a dance if that was good with him, and he agreed. I told him everyone on my mom's side was excited to be able to see him again after so many years. Him and my mother have been cordial for years at this point, so there was no animosity. He set up a dinner and had me and Victor over. It went very well. I was actually feeling positive about everything. We made plans for him to meet Victor's parents. It was a big deal because we had to travel to a different state to bring them. We made plans to make the trip, and coordinated everything. The week before the meeting, my father wanted to cancel. He said Debbie was having an exploratory surgery and she wouldn't be recovered in time. I said we had already made these plans but that's okay, and asked if we could just drive by and he could just step outside his home and say hi. Victor's father, who is in his 70s, was having an extensive surgery himself, so it was important to meet him now before he had it. He begrudgingly agreed. When we pulled up, I was surprised she came out with him and looked completely fine. No bandages, walked fine, no indication of anything. I thought that was odd, but who am I to judge? They both came out, said hi, and we moved on. He made plans over the course of the next few months. Every time, the week of, he would cancel. The excuses started pouring out. His friend's car broke down and he needed to lend him money. We offered to pay for dinner but they declined. Debbie was have exploratory surgery again. How many can one person have? Debbie had a doctor's appointments that he just found out about. They have to take the car to the shop, etc. Lies he had told over and over again. Some he reused from when I was growing up with him and I knew he was lying. His favorite lies were always medical. He wanted to treat me for my birthday in the summer, but that never happened. After we had to reschedule 3 times I said just forget it, we'll see you at the wedding. He started to be drunk on his phone calls again. Started being argumentative again. But he was excited for the wedding. He was going to make a nice trip out of it with Debbie and stay a few days. 3 weeks before my wedding I got a phone call from Debbie. They share a phone. As soon as I picked up she demanded to know why I didn't tell anyone that the parking garage next to the hotel we had a room block-in charged $25 a day to park. I was dumbstruck because firstly, I had no idea that the hotel didn't comp that. We live local to the venue so we were just going home after the wedding. Second, it's a major city, of course they're going to charge. And honestly $25 isn't that bad for the city. Thirdly, why are you calling me to complain about this? No one else had. I can't exactly change it. I told her I had no idea, that no one else who booked at the hotels had told me, and that $25 was actually a pretty good deal. I told her that if they couldn't afford it, it wasn't that big a deal, maybe they only stay one day, or because they only live an hour from the venue they didn't have to stay at the hotel. The venue itself has free parking. She hung up on me. We were getting married on Sunday in early November. The Tuesday before the wedding, I got a phone call from my father that I missed because I was having an emergency doctor's appointment due to having been in the hospital the day before, stress from everything exacerbated a prior medical issue, and instead received a text. The text said he wasn't coming to my wedding. That Debbie was having exploratory surgery and they couldn't come. That he would still send a card. I knew then that he was lying as he had lied the whole year. I texted back begging him to come. I wanted him to come, it wasn't about money. That I'm his daughter, and this was the biggest day of my life, to come for even an hour. Debbie would be fine for a short time, she has family that could watch her for a couple hours. He didn't have to stay. He replied that it's not a contest of who's more important, and he was surprised at me. I gave my wonderful Victor my phone while I was sobbing. I couldn't respond, I was hurting and devastated. He articulated a text, showed it to me for approval then sent it. It said basically, very politely but firmly, that if he couldn't spare a couple hours of his time to see me on the biggest day of my life, then we will go back to no contact and I will never again speak to him. My mother, who's her own story for another day, even called him to scream at him for what he was doing. She knew his lies too, and called him out on them. He said don't worry, she'll still get a card. I kept him unblocked up until mid-morning the day of my wedding. Not one message, not one call. I was so upset and angry. He had raised my hopes of having my father be there for me, then killed those hopes without a thought. I blocked him the day of my wedding. My wedding day was absolutely perfect. It was everything we wanted. I felt a little sad right before walking down the aisle, and some friends who didn't know about my father asked me where he was. But other than that, I didn't even think of him. It wasn't until after Thanksgiving that I thought to check my blocked messages. He hadn't sent me one message the day of my wedding wishing me luck, nothing. But he did send one message on Thanksgiving. To summarize, it said Debbie will always come first. You should understand that. I don't understand it. I told my brother, who still talks to him, that he is dead to me, and if he asks, to tell him that. My brother thinks that Debbie is the one preventing my father from being with his family. I quite frankly don't care. He made that decision, and these are the consequences. He asked my brother how much of a wave he made not coming, and my brother told him a big wave. But I'm not talking about it. So I made the decision my father will no longer be in my life, and I have so many emotions about it. But it's mostly relief, sadness and anger. But I can't help but occasionally check my blocked messages now, because some part of me just wants to know if he knows how badly he hurt me, or if he even cares. And some days I just want my dad. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing by cutting him out of my life. Ida for erasing him completely forever going forward? Update 1. Right after my post, I had a good talk with Victor, and he echoed everything you all said. I even looked into deleting my father's number permanently from my phone, but apparently that would unblock him. After a lot of reading through the comments and reflecting on what everyone said, I really started to think why I ever thought I was the asshole for cutting him off. Well, I guess I have my answer. My brother Devin, 30, is really impressionable. He lives with my mother, and while living with my mother can be a nightmare, they were doing well. My brother means a lot to me. I gave up school, a career, and took on 3 jobs to be able to help raise him for a few years with my dad after my parents' divorce. He has always struggled to truly be independent. Mostly due to my father's coddling most of his life. He was the golden child. The only boy. In an attempt to help him succeed, some family members, mom's side, decided to step up and get him out of my mother's house, and support him to a move to a warmer state to rent with some cousins. They even paid for him to fly out to the new state and see if he wanted to move. When he got home, he apparently went straight to my father's and spent 4 days there. I have no idea why. I called up my brother a few days after he returned back to my mother's. He said he was really looking forward to moving to the new state. After talking to him a bit, I mentioned that I was happy for him, but really sad I'd be losing one of my close family member I talked to. His response? Well, I'm the only family member who still talks to dad, so imagine how he feels. I was stunned. I said, I'm sorry, what did you say? He got angry and just said, well, when I move dad will really have no one. Because you refused to talk to him even though it's been months. You really should feel bad for him. He doesn't understand how you can still be mad at him. All those feelings came flooding back. The doubt. The guilt. The am I doing the right thing? And then the anger came. In that moment I realized that this is what my family normally does to me. And what my father normally does. He plays the victim. Makes everyone feel bad for him. Even though I am in the right, I am made to feel like a boss for having boundaries. I took a breath and explained to my brother Devin, Dad made his choice. He chose this. I was open to him being a dad, he declined that. He didn't want to be in my life, he has no right to complain. He did this to himself. I don't care if Debbie made him not go or not, he's a grown-ass man. And he didn't go to his own daughter's wedding, so he can stay dead to me, it was his choice. My brother didn't have anything to say to that. Just rushed me off the phone with barely a goodbye. Hung up after I barely got the words love you out. I told Victor what Devin said and he was appalled. He wished I had taken the call near him so he could speak to my brother himself. I told him that my father brainwashed him. That he's not normally like this. He reminded me that Devin is a grown man, and not a child anymore, and that I shouldn't excuse what he said. I became so upset. My resolve shaken once again. I felt awkward about the phone call, so I followed up the next day. He wanted to move the beginning of June. I asked him to visit before he goes from a car ride away distance away to a plane ride, and he said he would see me mid-May for his yearly visit to me like always. Then a week before our normal visit date, I found out from my mother my brother texted her and told her he plans to move in 4 days, and make the multi-day long drive to the new state. So he lied to me, and didn't even plan on seeing me to say goodbye. Victor had no words, just that he's incredibly disappointed in my brother. My brother called me the day before he left. He sounded so happy saying, hey, what's up? I told him, well, honestly, I'm a little hurt and disappointed in you right now because I'm assuming you're calling to tell me you're leaving tomorrow and you're not even bothering to say goodbye to me. He then was adamant that he told me. Then when I pointed out that he didn't, he erupted in anger at me saying I always play the victim, and why wasn't I happy for him leaving, and how dare I make him feel guilty, almost word for word what my father would say. I told him I'm thrilled he's moving and having a new opportunity. I'm upset he's telling me 12 hours before he's leaving and not saying goodbye when he literally has to pass within 20 minutes of where I live when he leaves. After I started crying, my brother apologized for not telling me. I offered to be up at whatever time he needed. I just wanted to hug him goodbye. He declined. Said he'd be back eventually. Victor was listening and was getting angry at my brother and how he was speaking to me. He's so agitated with him and is hoping he starts acting like an adult in the new state. It's been months now since he moved. I've heard nothing from my father. My brother and I talked occasionally on the phone with me checking in, especially that first month. He is struggling where he is to get a full-time job, but he is doing everything he can to at least pay rent. He became busy in the last month, so I hadn't heard from him in a while. My birthday came, he sent me a happy birthday text and said he'd call later. At 11:45 p.m. I finally got a call from him. I was in the middle of a video game match with friends. After a brief chat I asked if he was free the next night. He said yes, so I told him I would call him the next day for a proper catch-up because he caught me in the middle of something. He hung up me, and didn't answer my call the next day. I haven't tried to call since. I'm at a loss. I don't know what I did wrong, or what I did to deserve this treatment from him. Is this all because I won't forgive my father? And I just sitting here just sad. All I've ever wanted is my family to love me, and I don't know what to do next. If you have advice for me, I just ask you say it kindly. My heart is rather full of emotions at the moment. Update 2. I have gotten a couple requests for a further update, and I do have some new developments so I can at least share something with you all. It's not a full pot of tea, but you can sip it from a dainty teacup made up of my unresolved issues. Also, thank you all for your kind words. I appreciate all of you taking the time to comment and make me feel validated. Okay, now for the update to the update. My brother, in early October my brother called me, and was saying how he wasn't doing well in the new state, and he basically wanted to come back home. In a way, I wonder if he was fishing to live with me and Victor so he didn't have to return to my mother, but I would never live with him ever again. I basically just told him to talk to our mother and work out a plan to come back if that's what he wants to do. I'm through trying to fix things for him. He promised to return for Christmas. Which of course, didn't happen. I haven't heard from him since. I've gotten the group holiday texts, but I absolutely refuse to reach out. He has broken every promise he gave me, and I am finally feeling strong enough to distance myself. Through my mother I found out he got a better job and was looking to stay there. I guess I wasn't needed anymore, so that's why I haven't gotten a phone call or text. And then just yesterday I found out he isn't working anymore because his car has finally become a paperweight, a 20-year-old car that he never took care of. My mother used to force him to get oil changes and basic maintenance, and now without my mom there to annoy him into adulting, it finally died. So I feel at this point either my uncle is going to help him with a vehicle, or he's going to try and move back. I will bet money he will try to move in with my father if he does return. If that's the case, I do feel they will both join forces to try and manipulate me into forgiving them and using me. My father, he actually has been trying to reach out. I have received multiple texts from him every holiday saying how much he loves me and will love me always and wishes me and Victor well. I also keep getting calls and silent voicemails from random numbers. My sister even met with him for the first time in years because my niece wanted to meet him. He tried again to justify not going to my wedding, and my sister told him that there was zero excuse. He should have gone to the ceremony at the very least. He kept trying to defend himself, but my sister kept shutting him down, saying he could have made at least a minimum effort. While I'm not close with my sister, I greatly appreciated her saying that for me. Overall, she said he behaved himself and was fine. I actually was doing really good about not checking the messages, but I still once in a while have my curiosity get the better of me. Victor gets mad at me when I check. He wants me to not get sucked in again with either my brother or father. He still plans on having a chat with my brother next time we see him. I do feel myself starting to feel bad. My anger just isn't as sharp anymore. But I'm holding strong, reminding myself that I seem to only be his daughter when it's convenient, and that to me isn't a father. But I'm still just a girl who wants her dad, and I am trying so hard to not fall back into his perpetual pit of assholery. Me, not going to lie, I've been lonely. All of my friends after the wedding have disappeared. I reach out to them asking how they're doing and get one-word answers back, which hurts. I've been trying to make new ones, but it's been hard. I spend most of my days either working at home online for our business, or playing video games alone or with Victor. I love my husband, but sometimes I just want a girl day. My self-confidence has plummeted. I don't like what I see in the mirror anymore. We've been trying for a kid with zero luck, so that's taken a hit with my mental health as well. But I am actually going to my first therapy session next month, which I am incredibly excited about. So unfortunately my saga isn't over. Update 3. It's been about 8 months since my last update, and a lot has happened. I'm not even sure where to begin, so I guess I'll just jump right in. First, therapy has been life-changing. My therapist helped me see patterns I've been blind to my entire life. Turns out I've been in this cycle of trying to earn love from people who simply aren't capable of giving it unconditionally. She called it chasing emotional crumbs, where I'd get these tiny morsels of affection from my dad or brother and convince myself it was a feast. The hardest pill to swallow was realizing how much of my identity was wrapped up in being the fixer in my family, always trying to earn love that should have been freely given. About my father, He continued sending those "I'll always love you" texts for holidays, until Easter when I got a different kind of message. It was a long, rambling text about how Debbie was having serious health issues and how they were really struggling. No actual apology, just fishing for sympathy and probably money. I showed it to Victor, who just shook his head and said, "Right on schedule." I didn't respond. Then in June, something unexpected happened. My sister called me in tears. Apparently, Dad had shown up uninvited to my niece's birthday party, completely drunk, with Debbie in tow. He caused a scene, talking loudly about how ungrateful his children were and how nobody appreciates everything he sacrifices. When my sister tried to get him to leave, he refused until my brother-in-law threatened to call the police. As he was stumbling out, he looked at my niece and said, "Your aunt doesn't even care about you enough to be here." My sister was livid. The next day, my sister, who had been mostly neutral about my decision to cut contact, called and apologized to me. She said, "I get it now. I'm so sorry I ever made you feel bad about protecting yourself." That validation felt better than I can even describe. As for my brother, well, his car situation got even worse. He ended up having to quit his job because he couldn't get to work. My uncle refused to help him buy another car, saying he needed to learn responsibility. So, exactly as I predicted, he moved back and went straight to my father's house. According to my mother, they lasted together for about 3 weeks before the fighting started. My brother called me out of the blue one night in July, clearly intoxicated, ranting about how Dad and Debbie were impossible to live with and how Dad was always changing the rules. I listened, didn't offer advice, and when he finally paused for breath, I just said, "I'm sorry you're going through this. What are you planning to do?" He seemed shocked that I wasn't jumping in to fix things. He mumbled something about maybe staying with a friend and hung up. 2 days later, he texted asking if he could crash with Victor and me just for a week or two. Victor and I had already discussed this possibility and agreed on our boundaries. I texted back, "I'm sorry, but that won't work for us. I can help you look for resources if you need them." He responded with a guilt trip about how I always have to be perfect and can't even help family when they're down. I didn't take the bait. I just replied, "I understand you're disappointed. The offer to help you find resources stands." He never responded. Through my mother, I found out he's now living with our cousin and working at a warehouse. He sent me a birthday text last month that just said HBD, not even spelled out. Progress, I guess? The most unexpected development came last month. I got a call from an unknown number, and against my better judgment, I answered. It was Debbie. She was sobbing, saying my father was in the hospital. He'd fallen down the stairs while drunk and hit his head. She said the doctors weren't sure if he would make it, and that I should come if I ever loved him at all. I felt like I was underwater. Victor took the phone from me when he saw my face and asked for details. After he hung up, we sat in silence for a while. Finally, I said I thought I should go, not for my father, but for myself. Victor supported whatever I decided. When we got to the hospital, my father was conscious but disoriented. He had a serious concussion and some broken ribs, but the dramatic might not make it was a typical exaggeration. Debbie wasn't even there. Apparently, she'd gone home to rest after calling me. My father started crying when he saw me. Said he was sorry for everything, that he'd been a terrible father, that missing my wedding was the biggest mistake of his life. In that moment, I felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, no relief at his apology. Just emptiness. I realized the emotional hold he had on me was finally broken. I said, "I forgive you," and I meant it, not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. I stayed for about an hour, mostly listening to him talk about himself, then told him I needed to go. He asked if I would come back tomorrow, and I said I wasn't sure. I haven't gone back. As for the rest of my life, things are looking up. I've made 2 new friends through a local book club, and we've had several girl days that have been exactly what I needed. Victor and I decided to take a break from trying for a baby and focus on enjoying our marriage. We're planning a trip to Europe next spring, something I've always wanted to do. The thing I'm most proud of is that I'm learning to validate myself instead of seeking it from people who can't give it. My therapist said something that really stuck with me: you don't need to keep knocking on doors that have always been locked to you. I don't know what's going to happen with my father or brother going forward. Maybe we'll find a way to have a healthy relationship someday, or maybe we won't. But for the first time in my life, I'm okay either way. My worth isn't determined by whether they love me properly. And that feels like the biggest victory of all. Update 4. It's been over a year since my last update, and I hardly know where to begin. So much has happened that sometimes I have to remind myself that this is actually my life and not some bizarre TV drama. First, about my father. After the hospital incident, I didn't go back to visit him again. I did, however, receive a handwritten letter from him about 2 weeks after he was discharged. It was 4 pages long, filled with what appeared to be genuine remorse. He talked about going to AA, about how Debbie was supporting his journey to sobriety, and how he wanted to earn back my trust. The old me would have immediately called him, crying with forgiveness. The new me read it carefully, shared it with my therapist, and decided to respond with a short but kind note acknowledging his efforts but making no promises. For about 3 months, he sent weekly updates on his sobriety. No demands, no guilt trips, just updates. I responded occasionally with brief, supportive messages. Then, in what my therapist calls the test, he asked if Victor and I would come to dinner at his house to celebrate 6 months of sobriety. After discussing it extensively with Victor and my therapist, I agreed, with clear boundaries and an exit plan. The dinner was surprising. My father was clear-eyed and present in a way I hadn't seen since I was a child. Debbie was subdued, almost nervous. The house was spotless. He didn't drink, not even when Debbie had a glass of wine. Most shocking of all, he listened, actually listened, when I spoke. He asked questions about our lives and didn't make everything about himself. When I mentioned our upcoming Europe trip, he didn't try to one-up us with his own travel stories or criticize our choices. He just seemed genuinely happy for us. As we were leaving, he handed me a small box. Inside was my grandmother's wedding band, something I'd always loved but assumed was lost in the divorce chaos. He said, "I've been holding on to this for years. It should be yours." I broke down crying in the driveway. Victor had to drive us home. I wish I could say this was the start of a beautiful father-daughter reconciliation, but life isn't that simple. 2 months later, my father relapsed hard. He left a rambling, slurring voicemail at 2 a.m. accusing me of thinking I'm too good for the family now. Classic dad. I was disappointed but not surprised. My therapist reminded me that recovery isn't linear, and that his journey is his responsibility, not mine. He's been in and out of sobriety since then. I've maintained very low contact, responding to messages when he's sober, ignoring the drunk ones. It's not perfect, but it's what feels right for me right now. I'm not cutting him off completely, but I'm also not allowing him to disrupt my peace. Progress, I guess? Now, about my brother. Remember how he was living with our cousin and working at a warehouse? Well, that lasted until the cousin got engaged and asked him to move out. My brother, in his infinite wisdom, decided to move in with a coworker he barely knew. 3 weeks later, he called me in a panic because his stuff had been thrown out on the lawn and the locks changed while he was at work. Apparently, there had been some misunderstanding about rent. Against Victor's better judgment, but with his reluctant support, I offered to let my brother stay with us for 2 weeks maximum while he found a new place. He showed up with all his belongings in trash bags, looking terrible. Victor set up an air mattress in our home office and laid out very clear house rules. I'd love to say my brother rose to the occasion, but those 2 weeks were some of the most stressful of my marriage. He slept until noon every day, left dishes everywhere, constantly forgot to flush the toilet, and had mysterious friends calling or showing up at all hours. When Victor confronted him about the mess in the kitchen, my brother told him to chill out because she's always been a neat freak, referring to me like I wasn't standing right there. On day 13, exactly 1 day before his deadline to leave, I came home early from work to find my brother and my father sitting in my living room, drinking beer and watching TV like they owned the place. Turns out, my brother had given my father a key that Victor had lent him for emergencies. I stood in the doorway, speechless, as my father raised his beer and said, "Hey kiddo, hope you don't mind, just helping your brother move some stuff." I lost it. Completely lost it. I told them both to get out immediately. My father tried to play it off like I was overreacting, but for once in my life, I stood my ground without wavering. I took the key from my brother's hand and told him he had 2 hours to get his things and leave. My father started with his typical "after everything I've done for you" routine, and I just laughed, actually laughed in his face. I said, "Name one thing, Dad. Name one thing you've done for me that didn't ultimately serve you." He couldn't answer. They left, and I changed the locks the next day. My brother ended up moving back in with my mother, who called to berate me for abandoning family. I let her vent, then calmly explained what had happened. She went silent, then sighed and said, "He told me you kicked him out because Victor doesn't like him." Classic family manipulation tactic. When I told her the truth, she actually apologized to me, a first in our relationship. The most surprising part of this whole ordeal? I didn't fall apart. I was angry, yes, and disappointed, but I wasn't devastated. I didn't question my worth or spend days crying about why my family couldn't just love me properly. Progress indeed. In happier news, Europe was amazing. Victor and I spent 3 weeks traveling through France, Italy, and Greece. We ate too much, drank wonderful wine, took thousands of photos, and remembered why we fell in love in the first place. On our last night in Santorini, watching the sunset, Victor asked if I wanted to try for a baby again. I surprised myself by saying yes. And, well, I'm pregnant. 16 weeks along with a little girl. We're equal parts terrified and ecstatic. My mother cried when we told her, and has been surprisingly supportive, even offering to come stay with us for a few weeks after the baby is born, an offer I'm still considering with extreme caution. I haven't told my father or brother yet. Part of me feels guilty about this, but a bigger part knows that involving them in this special time comes with risks I'm not willing to take. My therapist says this is healthy boundary setting, not spite. My book club friends threw me a surprise pre-baby shower last weekend, just a small gathering with cake and non-alcoholic champagne, but it meant the world to me. Having friends who choose to be in my life, who show up without conditions or manipulation, still feels like a novelty. As I sit here feeling my daughter kick for the first time, I'm thinking about the kind of mother I want to be, the kind of family we're creating. I won't pretend I'm not scared, terrified, actually, of repeating patterns. But Victor reminds me daily that awareness is the first step to change, and that we're breaking cycles together. I don't know what the future holds for my relationships with my father and brother. I'm learning that it's okay to keep people at different distances in your life. Not everyone gets front row seats. Some people are better loved from the back of the theater, where they can't reach out and hurt you during the show. For now, I'm focusing on the family I'm building, not the one that broke me. And for the first time in my life, that feels like enough.